Hi everybody, it's Annabelle and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be recording the process of me building an orchid wall. This idea was inspired by the fact that all of my Phalaenopsis roots on this shelf have tried to stick to the wall behind it, and I really have always wanted to put orchids up onto some sort of a mounted wall, but never had the practical way of doing it. In the new grow room, I kind of feel like I have a little wall that would be suitable, and after some thought process and some inspiration from Kaylee Ellen's plant wall, which I will link up in the corner if you are not into houseplant channels but want to see some epiphytes on a wall, do check out her video. She's much bigger than me, so I'm sure people who are subscribed to me who are interested have already seen it, but if you haven't, go check that out. But I essentially wanted to try this process. So I obviously grow all of my orchids in semi-hydroponics with leca, or self-watering with leca, or various inorganic medium mixes. To start with, I need to remove all of the roots that have attached to the brick wall behind, and they've done this because the humidity is so high in this room at the moment that these bricks are actually not desiccating and they're probably holding a bit of moisture. Usually, like in summer, if they tried to do this, those root tips would desiccate and dry. So what I'm doing is spraying these down with a warm water solution that has a little bit of dish soap in. The dish soap will actually kind of lubricate a little bit the root, is what I'm hoping, and help it to swell and detach quicker from the wall. So I'm spraying these down, putting a little knife in just behind the root very gently. It's a blunt edged knife, I'm not jabbing the root or anything, wiggling that a bit and then spraying a little bit more behind the root to try and get some of this soapy solution down behind the root between the wall. And then this is coming off quite easily, so I'm just going to do that for all of the orchids to detach them from the wall before I move the shelf out. So I didn't want to just mount orchids onto a wall. There are plenty of inorganic materials that I could have mounted orchids onto, but for me in summer that would be a little bit too much work, I think, even with a kind of ease of watering that having a grow room provides, with a floor that can be obviously washed. The main thing that's put me off mounting orchids before is, one, they dry out too quickly for me. I can't be available to take orchids down, water them and then put them back every day. Two, they actually have a process of actually taking them down, watering them and putting them back up, as opposed to just sticking some water into a pot. And three, they drip all over other orchids while they're drying off, so they need to be put somewhere separate to dry and then moved. That's kind of a lot of work for me. I could manage it with 1 or 2 orchids, but not multiple orchids. I do love the natural cascading display, particularly with Phalaenopsis, that you get from mounts though. I've just never been able to grow in that way because it is too labour intensive for me and things dry too quickly in the summer. In the winter, which we're in at the moment, is a more manageable season for me to actually try this, because they can get established during the winter when the humidity is really high and they're not going to be drying out that quickly. My humidity is between 60 and 90% at the moment. Most of the time it's hovering between 70 and 80%. So this is a good time for me to try it. It may not work. I'm also going to be putting Phalaenopsis, particularly no ID Phalaenopsis, and other orchids that I have doubles of, or that are less important to me, or that are struggling and would have probably been put into the bin at some point anyway if they didn't make it. I don't like to do that. I don't lose many orchids, but the house move really stressed a lot of my plants and a lot of my orchids, and a lot of them are recovering, but some of them went into a bit of a downward spiral and aren't. So those ones I'm also going to stick onto the wall, and just things I've got divisions of, little pieces, things that I don't care too much about essentially, because while I'm going to do everything in my power to stop water showering on this wall and cross dripping, there is going to be some, let's be honest. Bacteria, fungi, viruses could all potentially be transmitted. I don't suspect that any of these orchids are infected with anything, but sometimes you actually just can't know. So I'm not putting anything valuable or anything that I would want to pollinate onto this wall. I just want to make that very clear, because I don't want everyone suddenly rushing to do it, and then if they've got one virused orchid, that may spread to all of the orchids. To mitigate this, what I'm going to do is line each of the felt pockets of this orchid wall, plant wall setup that I got from Amazon, which I will link in the description. Very cheap, very inexpensive. I'm going to line each of these with like a pond liner material up to the reservoir point. So this is still going to be a semi-hydroponic setup, but the bottom third is going to be lined with pond liner. So there'll be some water collecting in that can't drip down to the other shelves. Then the top 2/3 of each of these pockets will just be the leca directly against the felt material. So the felt will wick some from the leca. It'll also hold a bit of moisture in itself, so it may well act as a giant wick. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. So we're just going to have to wait and see, but I really, really wanted to try this. I'm not trying this with any valuable orchids, and everything on here is either a division, a double, or a no ID Phalaenopsis. And a couple of Vandas that I got from Equigenera in an order that aren't doing so great, that I've been trying to soak bare root for a while because I didn't want to stress them more with the transition to semi-hydro. I'm also going to stick them on the wall. And another couple of Vandas that I just want to try that are no IDs that I got from garden centres that have established in pots now, but I would actually just like to try them on this. I think this could be a really, really cool setup. So we're just going to have to wait and see how this goes. So to start off with, I'm going to pull the shelf away from the wall and clean the wall down before attaching the backing material onto the wall. So this is our wall, and we have a nice plug socket behind that I'm going to cover in the waterproof backing material so that there's no danger of anything dripping onto plug sockets. These are the felt plant holders that I got from Amazon, designed to attach to walls, and I'm just going to drill some holes into the wall, put the backing material up first, and then attach the 2 felt plant liners up onto the wall. And then I'm just going to line the bottom third of each pocket with the sort of pond liner waterproof material that I have, and then start filling it up with lacquer and putting some plants on. This is where I am by the end of day 1. It's been quite a lot of work, so I'm going to resume this tomorrow when we've got some daylight to work with. I keep adding more and more orchids onto this wall. It's quite addictive, so I will resume in the morning. So it's another day and I'm back to doing the plant wall. Just putting a little division of Insecticide plicata, which may well have another name as well, but I got this one from a not very reputable UK eBay seller. It never really took off for me. It likes to dry out quite a lot in between waterings, I noticed, in semi-hydro. It's a bit of a weird one, so I think it's going to quite like this actually. Otherwise it tends to rot new growth, so you have to like water it and then let it dry for a good amount of time before re-watering. It's a bit, I don't know if there's something wrong with it. The pink no ID phal is amazing. I just wanted to show you the root zone of this one. It's kind of cool. I've had this one for about 2 years. It's been in semi-hydro for that length of time. Really fantastic roots. I almost regret taking it out of its pot now to put it on, but I think it's going to be great on the wall. It isn't going to fit in a pocket, so I've just put it in a basket which I have hung off the one of the top hooks, so I hope that'll be okay. I will obviously have to water it quite a lot, but it'll get sprayed down with the rest of the wall. We're going to call it a day for day 2 because I've got some meetings and I'm pretty tired. This is pretty tiring. I will carry on, if not tomorrow, maybe the next day. So I did not carry on the next day or the next day. This is a couple of weeks later. I've just been gradually adding to the wall and creating a display. I've put 2 of the cheap IKEA white tables in front of this wall for the Phalaenopsis that are too big to go onto the wall, because my issue with my big phals in the new setup is I used to have them all on top shelves in the old grow room, which was fantastic because obviously the way phals spike and arch their spikes and cascade flowers down, it looked amazing. In the new setup, what I have to do is put them on lower shelves to protect them from the very harsh sun in summer. So the lower lights go on the lower shelves in this room, which means that the spikes, as they're emerging, they come up and they grow through the shelves, which is a real problem. So I've now got them in their own little setup in front, which should be a lot better. I'm really happy with the way the wall is looking. I am losing some lower leaves. I'm getting a bit of stress, but I think this was just kind of to be expected. When they put new roots out, they'll be more adapted to the new air to moisture ratio that's on the wall. So I think we will, towards the spring, be getting a lot more growth. But I'm spraying these down every couple of days with a pump sprayer that I keep by them, and they have a little heater under this table to keep them nice and warm on the wall, and I've got a fan pointing at the wall. And I keep a little pump sprayer full of rainwater and rain mix and a Jasper as well, the cat, just by the heater so it stays nice and warm. And this heater does heat the tables as well, so this is quite a good place for the warmer growers to be a bit protected from if, for example, my heater was to ever cut out that heats the whole conservatory, they'd be nice and warm. Jasper is wanting more food, I think. So what I do is I just have a manual pump sprayer, and this lasts me 3 or 4 waterings for this wall. So I just pump it up and then spray down each individual pocket with the rain mix solution, and just damp down any aerial roots, that sort of thing. It's quite easy, takes me about 10 minutes in all, and they don't drip at all onto the floor, which is fantastic, and they don't seem to drip down to each other. I think having the liner in the bottom of these pockets really has helped with that. So just go along. I've got some twinkle divisions along the bottom here, a few little divisions. Some of them do have some leaf spotting. That was honestly before the wall. My twinkles are just never particularly gorgeous. But I've heard lots of reports of people's twinkles actually not getting the leaf spotting when they mount them. So I was kind of thinking, well, actually maybe this would be good for them. I've got so many twinkles, they grow so quickly that I have a million twinkle divisions, so it's no big deal if they don't do so amazing. I can just pop them up and recover them. I've also got a little Angrecum, which I've noticed it really likes to grow very long aerial roots. It has fantastic pot roots. It's the Elephantinum, but it's just never done amazingly for me, so I just wondered whether it might do better in this setup with a more airy ratio. Little Maxillaria variabilis division. I have 3 of these obviously, so I was kind of like, well, the one in Leca, I might as well just stick it on the wall, see how it does. Nina's does amazing in an orchid pot, so I think they can be very versatile. So I'm just going along and spraying down the pots and filling up the reservoirs, which doesn't take very long because they're not very big reservoirs, and also just spraying down the tops of the lacquer so it doesn't get too dry, and spraying down the front pockets of the felt as well because the felt holds water. So I think this will help to just mean that I can go a few days without watering. And this watering process is very easy, and because I've got a little pump sprayer right by them with the nutrient mix actually in it already, it's just very easy for me as I pass to just do this quickly, which is kind of what I need, honestly. If I'm gonna have a setup like this, I need for things to be very easy for me to do it, or what happens is I don't do it and then they go weeks without watering, Phalaenopsis, and don't do well. So I need things to be very like in my face with watering. I need to have very easy, methodical ways to water, or I just struggle with it, which means the plants struggle. So just spraying everything down, and at the end I'll go in with a full spray and do a foliar feed as well, which should just help them to adapt a little bit better. So yeah, this is very easy and very quick, and one of the main obstacles with mounting orchids is watering them without having them drip onto a carpet or a floor in the house. Obviously that actually doesn't matter now because my conservatory, it doesn't matter if water goes on the floor, it evaporates eventually. But for this I've been very surprised that the water just doesn't seem to drip between pockets. It doesn't seem to drip onto the floor, and obviously I've got the backing on the wall, so it's not going to sit wet against the wall and create mold issues. So it also seems to dry very quickly, so within a couple of days these are all dry again. So I think that is probably necessary, because otherwise if I kept this very constantly wet, the felt would probably grow mold on it. So yeah, I'm just spraying them down and I'm hoping that this works. So far so good. It has only been a couple of weeks. I will have to keep you updated with how this goes. It may not work for me, especially as we move into summer. I may really struggle with this. We're just going to have to see if this remains a nice easy way to do things, or whether it becomes too labour intensive. But I absolutely love it, and I've always wanted a setup like this, so I'm really willing to work a little bit more to keep it going. I've got 3 Angrecum leonis, so I decided to chuck one onto this wall and see if it does well in this setup or not, just out of interest, because they are very versatile and lots of people do grow them mounted, so I was just very interested to see whether they do well. So I'm just going to foliar feed now, spraying tops and bottoms of the leaves, and then I will stick the fan on them to make sure that they dry out. But one thing that's fantastic about this is obviously all the crowns of the Phalaenopsis are facing down as they would in nature, so I don't have to worry so much about crown rot, which is something that I've always had to worry about in higher humidity settings with lower airflow. So yeah, I've got my Phalaenopsis displays in the front. Their setups haven't changed at all. They are just in semi-hydro or self-watering with lacquer. But they've got more room to arch their spikes gracefully, and they make quite a pretty display, I think, in front of the wall. Ultimately, this setup for me is a bit of an experiment and a little bit risky because of my history with mounted orchids, i.e. I don't do well with them. But we'll see. I think having a new setup, having moved house and having this new grow room and new environment, it's really worth me trying out new things. Because my humidity is so high in winter, I have a bit of flexibility to play with trying out experiments like this. So we'll just have to see how it goes. Before trying any new setup, I'd really encourage everyone to really think carefully about the pros and cons and whether they can manage the cons in their environments with their lifestyles, because I think that's obviously what often makes things fail, is not being aware of all of the cons to any setup and then running into them at a later date. Some things we can't foresee, so I will just have to try this and see how it works in my new environment with the setup, but I'm really willing to work a bit harder to make it work because I love it, I really do, and I want it to work. I want it to be a bit of a feature, and I can't wait until they establish on it if they do. I really want to see some juicy aerial roots sticking to some felt. It's one of my pleasures in life is seeing aerial roots stick to things, so yeah, a bit weird, but I will keep you guys updated, of course, and thank you so much for watching my video today. Let me know any comments or ideas down below and what you think of this setup. I'm really interested to hear everybody's thoughts and ideas, and would you have an orchid wall if you could, or do you think it's going to be a little bit too much work and I'm going to be recording an update next summer like, yeah, it would have worked if I could water it. Let me know what you think down below, and thank you so much for joining me for my little wall DIY planting today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel to see more regular orchid updates and orchid wall updates, and I'll see you guys all later. Bye!